In the Bolivian highlands, 3,800 meters above sea level, there is a stone block that has tested the patience of every engineer who has stood beside it. The block is H-shaped. Its internal angles are cut to exactly 90 degrees in 3 planes simultaneously. Modern laser measurement confirms the tolerance across the full surface is under 0.5 millimeter. This block was shaped by a civilization that, in our entire archaeological record, has no iron tools, no steel, no wheel, and no evidence of any cutting instrument harder than the stone itself. And yet the cut exists, it is real, and no one has successfully reproduced it by hand. Today I will show you 7 structures that should not exist given the tools of the people who built them. Each one exceeds the previous in the gap between what ancient builders demonstrably possessed and what their structure demands. The block in Bolivia is the last item on this list. We will return to it. Before we do, I will tell you that what makes it truly disturbing is not its precision in isolation. It is the company it keeps. 21 similar blocks at the same site, all interchangeable, all cut to the same tolerance, as if produced on a manufacturing line that no one has located. That is the debt this video will collect, the final block, the full pattern, and a question you will carry away that neither I nor any archaeologist alive today has answered. The first stop is above the Peruvian city of Cusco, at 3,700 meters elevation, a site called Sacsayhuamán. The outer wall is built from limestone and diorite blocks, and the largest individual stone in this wall weighs approximately 125 tons. That is heavier than a fully loaded Boeing 737 jet. These blocks are fitted together without mortar in a pattern of interlocking polygons. Some blocks have as many as 12 distinct faces. Each face is in perfect contact with the adjacent stone. You cannot pass a sheet of paper between them. Stand at the base of this wall and look straight up. The stone directly above your head was placed there without cranes, without metal chains, without draft animals large enough to haul it. The Spanish chronicler Pedro Cieza de León stood here in 1539 and wrote that no Spanish engineer could imagine the mechanism by which these stones were lifted and positioned. Cieza de León had seen every major Roman ruin in Europe before he came to Peru. He was not easily impressed. The Inca themselves attributed this wall to a prior people they called Viracocha, a civilization that came before the Inca, built in the dark, and then disappeared. Archaeologist Brian Bauer of the University of Illinois has identified structural evidence of at least 2 distinct building phases at Sacsayhuamán, separated by centuries. The earlier phase uses larger stones with more complex polygonal jointing. The later Inca additions use smaller, more regular blocks. Something built the original wall at a scale the Inca could never exceed. The structure survives. The civilization that built it has no match in our history. If this kind of gap between evidence and explanation is what you are here for, subscribe. Each structure on this list pushes that gap wider. 11,500 years ago, in what is now southeastern Turkey, someone built a temple. The date is not contested. Radiocarbon analysis places the construction of Göbekli Tepe at approximately 9500 BCE. At that date, agriculture did not exist anywhere on Earth. The wheel did not exist. Writing did not exist. The people living at this moment were mobile hunter-gatherers with no permanent settlements and, according to every standard model of human history, no capacity to organize the labor required for what they built. What they built, T-shaped limestone pillars weighing up to 20 tons each, carved with animals in high relief, raised vertically in precise circular arrangements, with at least 20 separate enclosures detected by ground-penetrating radar beneath the hill. No smaller, rougher version of this site has been found. No workshop where the carving technique was developed. Archaeologist Klaus Schmidt of the German Archaeological Institute, who directed excavations here from 1994 until his death in 2014, wrote in his last published paper that Göbekli Tepe does not fit any known developmental sequence. It appears at full complexity at the exact moment when the tools to build it should not yet have existed. And then something stranger. Around 8000 BCE, the people who built Göbekli Tepe, or their descendants, deliberately buried the entire complex under thousands of tons of loose fill. They entombed their own creation with intention. Why? No consensus answer exists. The structure survives. The civilization that built it has no match in our history. From southeastern Turkey, we cross into central China. to a quarry district in Zhejiang province near a village called Longyou on the Q River. In 1992, a man named Wu Anai spent weeks pumping water from a pond his village had always assumed was bottomless. When the pumps cleared the final layer, Wu Anai descended with a lantern and found stone stairs leading into a carved hall 5 stories tall. What the following months revealed: 24 separate chambers, each the size of a large aircraft hangar, carved by hand into the siltstone bedrock. The total volume of rock removed approaches 1 million cubic meters. That is enough material to fill 400 Olympic swimming pools. Every single wall surface in all 24 chambers is covered in parallel chiseled grooves of identical width, identical depth, and identical spacing. A civil engineer from Tongji University in Shanghai who measured these grooves with calibrated instruments in 2002 reported that the deviation in groove depth across an entire wall surface was less than 2 millimeters. He then attempted to replicate a 1-meter section of the groove pattern using iron chisels, the same tools available in ancient China. After 6 hours, his own section showed deviation of more than 8 millimeters, 4 times the variation of the original. He stated publicly that he could not explain what he was measuring. Chinese historical records document every major engineering project from the Warring States period forward. In those records, the Longyou Caverns do not appear. Not one sentence, not one legend, not one name. 24 chambers large enough to shelter thousands of people, and the builders erased every trace of themselves from the written record entirely. The structure survives. The civilization that built it has no match in our history. 4 structures so far. 4 civilizations with no documented contact between them, and each one leaves the same unexplained signature. Stonework that exceeds what the tools of the period should be able to produce. 1 anomaly is an outlier. 2 is coincidence. 4 begins to look like something else entirely. The question none of the remaining items will fully answer, but which the final one will bring into its sharpest possible form, is this. If multiple isolated civilizations demonstrated a precision we cannot replicate today without machine tools, where did that knowledge come from, and where did it go? From the Kaur River, we move west to the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, to a site called Baalbek. The Romans built a temple platform here in the 1st century CE. It is one of the largest Roman construction projects ever documented. But the Romans built on a foundation they did not lay. Beneath the Roman stonework lies a pre-existing course of blocks weighing between 400 and 800 tons each. 3 of them, grouped together in what is known as the Trilithon, are the largest precisely cut stone blocks ever identified on this planet. The largest single quarried block at Baalbek, still partially buried and known informally as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, has been measured at approximately 1,243 tons. The most powerful wheeled crane currently in production, the Liebherr LTM 11-1200-9.1, has a maximum lift capacity of 1,200 tons under ideal conditions. Moving the Baalbek Trilithon stones from the quarry to the building site, across uneven terrain, required moving objects that exceed the stated capacity of the heaviest lifting equipment we manufacture today. German archaeologist Margareta van Es, who led a structural survey of Baalbek in 2014, documented that the Roman builders integrated the pre-existing foundation into their platform without fully understanding its origin. The Romans, who kept meticulous construction records, left no record of who placed the Trilithon or when. They built their most monumental complex on a foundation that was already too old for them to trace. The structure survives. The civilization that built it has no match in our history. Now the list changes dimension. Not size, precision. Below the plateau of Saqqara in Egypt, in a tunnel system called the Serapeum, there are 24 granite boxes. Each box was cut from a single block of black Aswan granite. Each weighs between 60 and 70 tons. The interior surfaces of these boxes were finished to a flatness of 4/10,000ths of an inch across a span of more than 2 meters. That is the tolerance used to finish the mirror blanks of modern research telescopes. Optical grade. Mechanical engineer Christopher Dunn, who spent 25 years in precision manufacturing before measuring these boxes himself, documented this flatness with a calibrated precision ground flat in direct contact with the granite surface. He stated that achieving this finish in granite, one of the hardest stones on Earth, using any handheld abrasive method available in ancient Egypt, would require a level of time and consistency that strains any realistic manual process. The boxes sit in underground recesses in the tunnel walls. The lid of each box fits its base on every face without a measurable gap. Egyptologist Joanne Fletcher of the University of York has confirmed that the finishing quality of the Serapeum boxes exceeds the standard of documented Egyptian stoneworking tools. She attributes it to an advanced hand-grinding technique not yet fully identified. One camp accepts that explanation and argues we are missing the workshop evidence. The other camp points out that explaining the grinding is only half the problem. Moving and placing 70-ton stone boxes underground, without damage, with millimeter alignment, in a tunnel too narrow for heavy lifting equipment of any era, remains its own separate unsolved problem. Which camp are you in? Write it in the comments below. The structure survives. The civilization that built it has no match in our history. From ancient Egypt to 1950s Florida. Between 1923 and 1951, a man named Edward Leeds-Kalnin, 1.5 meters tall, 54 kilograms, a coral quarryman who had emigrated from Latvia at age 26, built a structure south of Miami that is now called Coral Castle. He moved over 1,100 tons of coral rock, alone. Some of the individual stones weigh 30 tons. The largest single piece weighs 58 tons. Leeds-Kalnin worked at night and permitted no one to observe him. He refused to explain his method to anyone who asked. A neighbor who once glimpsed him through the darkness said the stones appeared to float into position. Engineers who examined the site after Leeds-Kalnin died in 1951 found a wooden tripod, a set of hand tools, and an old truck. They could not construct a method using those tools that accounts for a 58-ton piece of coral moving upright into place on a wall. Leeds-Kalnin left behind a series of self-published pamphlets on what he called the magnetic current, a personal theory of electromagnetic force. Modern physicists find no mechanism in those pamphlets that explains the stone movement. The man had a name, the structure has an address, the method has no explanation, the structure survives. The civilization of one man that built it left no replicable record behind. Now we return to where we started. To the block in Bolivia, to Puma Punku. The site sits 600 meters from the ruins of Tiwanaku, on the Bolivian Altiplano, at 3,800 meters above sea level. The Tiwanaku civilization that built here was sophisticated, documented agriculture, ceramics, extensive Andean trade networks. What they did at Puma Punku is different from everything else they left behind. The H-shaped andesite blocks scattered across this site are not merely cut with precision, they are cut to a manufacturing standard. Every H-block at the site fits any other H-block without shimming or adjustment. The internal angles are consistent to less than 1 millimeter across hundreds of separate pieces. There is no sequence of trial blocks showing a learning curve, no proto-H blocks with wider tolerances from an earlier period. The precision appears at full specification from the first stone, as if copied from a template that already existed. Geologist Alexei Vranich of the University of California, Berkeley, who directed Tiwanaku excavations from 2001 to 2006, documented that the stonework at Puma Punku represents the highest precision cutting in the pre-Columbian Americas, with no antecedent in the regional archaeological record. Some of the andesite was quarried at Copacabana Peninsula, approximately 90 kilometers away, across Lake Titicaca. Run your finger along the cut edge of one of these blocks. It does not give. The edge is as clean as something produced on a machine line. There is no machine line in the Tiwanaku record. There is no iron. There is no evidence of deep-water vessels capable of moving stone this heavy across a high-altitude lake. And yet the stone is there. The cut is there. 21 identical blocks beside it, each interchangeable with the next. The structure survives. The civilization that built it has no match in our history. 7 structures, 7 locations across 5 continents, spanning 8,000 years of time. What connects them is not mystery for its own sake. It is a specific, measurable gap between what the people who built each structure are documented to have possessed and what building the structure actually required. Our model of human progress assumes knowledge accumulates, that each generation inherits what the previous one discovered and adds to it. But the evidence at these 7 sites suggests a different possibility, that there were periods when human knowledge reached a precision we have not regained, and then something interrupted that knowledge entirely. Not a gradual decline, a cut. Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried. The Longyou builders erased themselves from every record. The Tiwanaku precision at Puma Punku appears without a developmental sequence and disappears without a successor. What was buried with intention tends to be buried for a reason. What was erased with effort tends to be erased for one too. Which raises a question that extends past archaeology into something harder to examine. There are places on this planet where the knowledge of what lies underground has not been lost, but has been deliberately contained, where coordinates have been removed from public satellite maps, where boundaries are maintained not by archaeologists worried about fragile artifacts, but by military institutions that have surveyed what is there and decided, in explicit written policy, not to share it. Those sites are documented in partial declassified records that have surfaced through Freedom of Information requests over the past 2 decades. What those records describe is not ancient ruins in need of preservation. It is something that raises the same question as every structure on this list, but without the comfortable distance of thousands of years between us and the answer. The same gap, the same impossibility, and a prohibition considerably less patient than an archaeologist's caution. That list exists, and it begins in a location you will not find on any map you can currently access. Share this with someone who still believes the history books have told them everything.